Being bullied at mediation, part of the series, Mediating with or Without Attorneys with Tye Bourdony. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is attorney Mac Pierre-Louis, lawyer, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator.
And Tye Bourdony, primary mediation trainer and full-time mediator here in Central Florida and Orlando.
Yes, awesome. Guys, so if to anyone out there, if you've been a follower of this channel for any length of time, you know we've done multiple videos where we've talked about mediation and the neutrality component of mediation and how the parties are there to try to agree on the resolving the disputes and find ways to make repairs to relationships and get to a place where they can have a functioning agreement, right, that benefits all sides. But how can you do any of that if there's bullying involved, if there's violence even? Sometimes parties go to mediation, but they're not on the same page because one side is so aggressive and so bullying that it creates a very unequal playing field. Okay, it creates an imbalance in the negotiation process that can help break up any attempt to reach consensus. So this is where the mediator comes in. The mediator's job is to help these parties build bridges and work things out. But what about if the mediator is weak? What about if one party is so domineering that they start forcing their will upon the other side? Is that a true mediation? Is that process legitimate? Is it right? Is it ethical? So that's what we're talking about today, okay? Because we all, as mediators, have heard and have seen people attempt to use power in order to try to get their way in a process that is supposed to be even. All right, so Tye, let's start with you. Do you see this topic come up a lot? Do you see bullying and mediation? And what are your initial thoughts about it?
Yes and yes. We're talking. You kind of hit on it in the imbalance of power, and it can come in so many ways in mediation. You can have a pro se party, that is someone who is not represented. They're there on their own, and then the other party may be represented by an attorney, or there may be an attorney representing a party, depending on the kind of case. And so you can have an imbalance of power simply because somebody doesn't have a good background, or because in the law, or because they're nervous, or because they're representing themselves. You can have an imbalance, which is why it's always a good idea to seek legal counsel before going to mediation or any kind of legal hearing, or get someone who does this for a living, because they do this every day. And they will be able to help represent you best. You're going to be nervous when you go to mediation. You're going to be scared. You're going to be feeling all kinds of feelings. And so at the very least, seek out a consultation or bring someone with you. But the danger is when you get to mediation that some party is overbearing. And that overbearing can be any one of a number of things. What about between the parties? Typically, there's always somebody who's the stronger personality. Or you're going to have someone who is just mean, or you're going to have someone who is just overwrought with emotions. Point of the matter is, as a mediator, this imbalance of power can come in so many different ways. And so an easy way to deal with an imbalance of power, even if you're a party experiencing the imbalance of power, you can simply ask your mediator, can I be in caucus? Can we please speak separately? Get out of the earshot, get out of the same room, get into your own room with the mediator so you can then be comfortable. Or the mediator, for the mediator, split those parties up. because the mediator needs to make sure that everybody's self-determination is intact, that no one is being forced, right? That all agreements are voluntary and consensual. That's the thing that the mediator is always dealing with, right?
And I need to tell you that there are always rules in mediation. It's not like a process where just time flows and people are just showing whatever they want. The mediator is a gatekeeper of the process, and
Yes.
because it is this way, there are certain rules. And I really, this might be childish, but I think that each of us likes when the rules are simple and are equal to everybody. So, for example, the rules that we are not raising our voices, that we are not interrupting one another. If you are to say something, you can just take notes and wait until your turn comes. And um, anything else you add on the list, as long as it's just short, concise, and everybody then observes it, it's also a way that you upfront prohibit anything like that happening, because you are not telling someone, oh, you are bullying your wife, or you are now being attempting at bullying your husband. You're saying, do you remember there was this rule and that we are not interrupting one another?
Mhm.
And what do you think about just calming your voice down so that we can hear you better? And usually you distract someone to this point where they don't want to continue the way they want if they are really interested in the process. Of course, you might meet someone who will come to mediation only to show once again that he is in power. But I doubt this is a place. And please remember, mediation is always voluntary. If you really feel bad and nobody, your lawyer, the mediator, is really reacting to anything that happens to you, you still have your own rights. You, being the mediation party, can say, I want to have to be in a separate room. I want to be in a separate place. Or I want a break. That's been too much for me.
Yeah.
Or ultimately, you as a party can say, sorry, that's been too much for today, or I don't want to continue any longer.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it's all about the mediator protecting the process,
Yeah,
right?
right.
There's a process in place, and there's one individual in the entire room, whether it's physically or virtually, who is there to protect the process to make sure that that bullying does not occur.
The
Okay,
guardian
exactly, and it's a sacred duty.
mediator. Right.
Okay, and
It is.
so the just know this:
It is.
the mediator's job is, as a third party neutral, is to help parties come to resolution, but protect the process in a way where people can feel they're being heard and to get their message across. And so that when they're negotiating, they can actually get ideas conveyed properly. This is why mediators do active listening, for example, right? Let me make sure I heard you right. Let me make sure that I understand. And so people are there to go through a process that they can trust, they believe in. Okay. Even if the mediation doesn't resolve itself in a final agreement, the at least the parties can, at the end of the process, say, you know what, we have our fundamental disagreements or fundamental differences, but it's not for lack of trying. Okay. It's because we just disagree, and that's fine. That's what we have judges for. But when one party starts to think that a mediator is going to allow for bullying, or that the parties are going to feel intimidated just because the mediator's not going to do anything about it to prevent that, that's when the whole system falls apart. Okay, so I guess one takeaway is make sure you go to a good mediator who's aware of all of this. Okay, because it's on the mediator to make sure that they don't allow the bullying to happen.
An
But
experienced mediator might be an easier way to figure who
correct,
can and can't. Right.
correct. And another thing, though, is understand that the mediator is not there to be one side's protector. A mediator can't protect one side from their ignorance, for example, in the law.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
And so, um, Dr. Bernie Mayer and Jacqueline von Guzman, we did a episode on the neutrality trap. Okay,
mm.
where we're debating whether or not a mediator can truly be neutral, and what are the ethics of being neutral when there's a clear wrong happening. That debate is for a whole other conversation, and you
Yes.
can check it out on the YouTube channel. But generally speaking, A mediator has to be neutral and not take a side. So therefore, I would say this. One thing we got to keep in mind is anybody who's listening to me, anyone who's listening to me, and they are concerned that the mediator is not going to be neutral, keep in mind that if the mediator then comes on your side to help defend you, they're now going to be doing a wrong as well in reverse. The mediator's not there to, again, to protect the individuals. The mediator's there to protect the process. And
Mhm.
it's that process you got to have faith in and know is going to work to allow you to have a say, to allow you to have the ability to reach some kind of agreement. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have an impasse and to go to court. But we just want to make sure that the process was actually held with extreme importance. And I think experienced mediator, like Ty just said, is somebody who can actually help protect that.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree because as the mediator, we've seen it again. We've seen this issue come into mediation not only again and again and again, but in so many different ways, right? You can be bullied by another attorney. You can be bullied by the other party. Emotions get in the way, and so it's you're right. It's the mediator's job. We are the guardian of the process. It's our job to make sure that everyone's right to self-determination is intact, that everyone is making an agreement or coming to an agreement because they willingly want to and not because they're being forced to. Now, don't get me wrong. There are many pressures in the mediation process. A person might agree to something even though they don't want to do it, but only because they think this is the best thing for me to do. It's not exactly what I want, but I'm comfortable with it if it gets me where I'm at. Now, that's a healthy perspective. It's when someone in a relationship, if we're talking family issues, right, between my wife and I, depending on the situation, someone is always a little bit more either powerful or their voice is a little more, dominant. In mediation, then you have emotions, and then you have so many other things going on. And our job is to keep everything not emotion free, but at the place where everyone feels like that they have buy-in, that everyone feels heard, that the mediator is there for everybody, right? And so we have these challenges we need to overcome. And so people are always worried about, is it going to be a fair process? Am I going to be able to say what I need to say? I know how they are. They're going to bully me. I hate that attorney. I mean, pick something, and it's valid. And so we need to be able to make them feel safe, right? Mediation is supposed to be a safe place. We need to make them feel heard. And when we overcome these obstacles, that is something taking a little bit, sucking the air out of the room. Our job is to get that air back in a place where even the party who is being the overbearing individual still feels comfortable when I step in. And the easy thing to do is separate them, right? In any one of a number of situations, caucus is going to work. But even when I'm caucusing to help to stop something, even the party who's the one I'm stopping, they're still going to feel as if I'm being neutral, I'm being fair, and they still have buy-in. So it's the mediator's job to set that tone in very challenging situations. And so the more a mediator sees it in so many different ways, the better we are at dealing with it, right? And so that's what you want. You want an experienced mediator who isn't going to give up their neutrality for anybody and make everyone feel like they are being heard, even the ones that are tough,
And I want to give an example. For example, I was in a mediation where the lady mediator was running the mediation. Then there was my female client, and I was a lawyer. And then there was a female lawyer representing the husband. The husband was a big man with a very, very influential voice.
Mm-hmm.
And on top, during this mediation, um, He was acting the way that was ignorating the women or ignoring, or actually he was also acting the way that was a little bit offensive to everybody in the room, like irritation, gestures that were like,
Yeah.
I didn't think the mediator handled it well. For
Mm-hmm.
some reason, we needed to stop. And I knew it was very important for the parties to finish this mediation because,
Mm-hmm.
all in all, it was going well. Just the atmosphere wasn't the best
Right.
one. For
Right.
the next mediator and mediation session, I decided to send my colleague a mail into this mediation. And you can't imagine how it
Mm.
changed the dynamic in the room. The guy was absolutely peaceful, was not raising his voice,
Mm.
was not making his theatrical gestures or
Mm.
anything like that. Suddenly, it was
Mm.
like the balance was brought up. And I honestly believe that in this very situation, there was a moment for the mediator to say, lovely, you are doing great progress, but I need to separate you into two separate rooms. That was a physical mediation. In the online environment, it is even easier.
Mm.
You stay in the separate rooms, and I am helping you to communicate. I do believe there is a little bit of tension. That's unnecessary. Let us try another way. She didn't do that. On the next mediation session, I brought my own ace, and and we did it.
Yeah, so
That's interesting.
everyone who's listening should know that
Mm.
violence is always going to be taken very seriously in the mediation process, as it should be. And what mediators cannot account for are things that happen outside of the mediation space, right? That maybe intimidation or bullying that happened before the mediation started, intimidation and bullying that happens after the mediation ends. Those
Mm.
things we have no control over. So obviously, if you feel you're endangered or whatever, you need to call the police and take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, but during the process itself, what we want to make sure is that the parties know that the process is protected and that they can rely on it. And again, my takeaway is always like, if it doesn't work and the parties disagree, it's not because there was some kind of bullying that happened. The mediator would have attempted to resolve that, so
Right.
in order to prevent it, to create a level playing field. But again, a mediator cannot protect you from yourself. Sometimes you might be your own worst client.
A
Mediator
good one might be able to.
uh,
I'm
a
joking
good
a little bit.
well, a
A little bit.
mediator can't protect a person from making decisions that a
Mm.
reasonable person might think is not so smart. But if we're talking about consensual and voluntary and self-determination, then people are going to decide what they want to happen. um so and then there's instances where the bullying might come from the mediator. It's possible. I've seen it happen where the
It
mediator
shouldn't
was.
be coming from the
Yeah,
mediator, though. Not.
it should never be coming from the mediator. So that's one form of bullying we would definitely tell you is not normal and should not be expected to be normal. Okay. Especially when the mediator, is slamming doors or is literally intentionally offending someone in order to try to get a settlement agreement. That I honestly, sometimes people just need to go to court, because sometimes that's the better outcome. Because certainly, if it's one thing if you are being pressured by the other side, it's a whole other thing if you're being pressured by the mediator as well. Okay. There needs to
Well,
be.
mediators put pressure, though. Let's
No,
be
no, no.
honest.
So the example I was using was not
Yeah.
the
Right.
mediator
Right.
putting
Right.
pressure. Like
Reasonable. Right.
we want to put reasonable pressure in order to try to let people see reality
Right.
and shake
Exactly.
them into reason. But
Right.
what I'm
Right.
discussing is when a mediator might go a little bit far and beyond
Yeah.
the pale, when it's purely just pressure, 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 and it's no longer the
Mm.
party's
Yeah.
decision anymore. I have literally seen a mediator threaten, to go to the court with certain information unless a case got settled. That's not legal. Okay, just flat
No.
out. All
Yeah.
right, and so
No.
that's what I'm talking about, is these extreme and thankfully rare
Yeah.
situations.
Rare.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, the parties might need to just find themselves another mediator in that
Right.
instance. But
Right.
most of the time, thankfully never happens. And the parties need to look out for each other because that's where the real bullying might actually happen. All right, Ty, you want to wrap us up? It's 20 after.
Yes. So everybody should feel that mediation is a place where you're not going to be bullied. Should feel as if mediation is a safe place where your voice is going to be heard. The mediator will make sure that those things don't happen. And that's when the mediator does take a position. When someone is being bullied, when someone is being unduly influenced, the mediator has to let the parties know that we're not going to be able to do that. Everybody's voice must be their own voice, and a good mediator is going to help the parties get to that place. And every mediation cannot result, should not result in agreement, right? It's case by case. And the mediator is going to know how to shift as needed. And so what we want is a good experienced mediator who's seen these things play out in so many ways, who, like Bruce Lee, can be like water and fluid with the parties and take them and the agreement, if it's possible, where it needs to be. Everybody should not worry about being bullied at mediation. And the mediator is going to lay down the law with respect to, like you said, Natalia, in our opening, we're going to let the parties know what we expect, right? And then the mediator is going to do their best to make sure that mediation is the place where people, if possible, can find the right outcome and mediated agreement to help them move forward.
Awesome. All right, guys. Until next time, we have a lot more interesting and important and insightful topics
Yes.
with Tye Bourdony. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye, guys.